Hey guys, Savage Joy here with Real Progressives. Tonight I am joined by Kerri Evelyn Harris. She is running for Senate in the state of Delaware. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me tonight. I appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
I've actually gotten a few requests for Kerri, so this is pretty awesome. I always like when I can deliver.
Yes, thank
Sometimes the
you.
requests I get, I'm like, they won't even no, they don't know me, trust me. um, so as I said, she's running for Senate in Delaware. She is a veteran, a mother, and an activist. You also volunteered for Habitat for Humanity.
I did.
And the thing I liked about reading your story and where you come from is you did not wait till November 8th to start caring about these things. You've been, a humanitarian for years.
Yes.
So can you kind of touch on what got you involved in those things? What made you an activist?
I come from a family of activists, to be quite honest. It's not something that, I don't know if would be innate to me because I grew up in this environment. It was something that my parents basically let us know that was a requirement for us to give back to our communities. How we did it is everyone was different. But from a young age, it was modeled. My parents were educators. They ran nonprofit organizations. They helped their neighbors. It was just understood that we succeed or fail together as a community. And so it just was natural for me to continue that legacy for my family. And again, not just my parents, but their parents. It's who we are. It's something I'm very proud of. It's something I will instill in my children. And I think that helping people is contagious also. And it inspires people. And it's the whole, pay it forward. And it's been working for forever. And I know it's benefited my life greatly. So.
Absolutely. We were all inspired by someone.
Yes.
So, yeah, absolutely. You're also a program director for an organization called Achievement Matters. Can you touch on that?
Yes. So it's actually a program that is under the National Urban League, but I work with the Metropolitan Wilmington Urban League Achievement Matters program. It was very strong a while back and it tapered off. And so I was brought on to bring it back to life. We have some issues in Wilmington with education. And it's not because people don't care to be educated. It's not because families don't want their children to succeed. And I can't say that in the particular school that I work in, that I don't see educators really wanting to contribute. It's a broad spectrum of inefficiencies with our government, with how our community is able to function that prevents people from succeeding. And so what we're trying to do through the Metropolitan Wilmington Urban League and Achievement Matters is we're working with this specific school to see if we're able to close the achievement gap there. And if we can, then we'll move to other schools. And the idea that we're working with is to build the idea of leadership within each individual child to make them realize that they are something more than the trauma that they are exposed to on a regular basis. We are a very small state. Wilmington is our largest city. Oftentimes on national news, you hear about Chicago and Detroit, but per capita, we have a very, very high crime rate, specifically dealing with guns, which is a big issue here throughout the United States, but has been a major issue in Delaware and Wilmington specifically. Trauma is real, and we expect our students to succeed, and we don't give them the outlets to deal with their trauma. In addition to trauma, their parents are just trying to make ends meet. And so oftentimes they're working multiple jobs, so kids are raising kids. And it's not because, again, parents don't care. It's because they're trying to give their children opportunities, but you don't know how many students haven't been able to participate in this program because they have to take care of younger siblings. That's something that we're trying to remedy as well. But again, it's a systemic problem. And this is our test study to see how we can develop the program to create larger areas of success. So, and it's been wonderful to see these kids grow, to see them break down walls, and realize who they are and that they have a voice. We're bringing them at the end of April to Legislative Hall here in Delaware, which is our state body, and they're going to advocate for themselves, for what they've decided would be their issue, which is school discipline, dealing specifically with school to prison pipeline. But that's huge because they're realizing at a young age that they have a voice. So that's a big milestone for them.
Absolutely. As far as Delaware, do you have a lot of for-profit prisons?
Regarding like corporations in general, or?
Just prisons who are like privately owned, that they make money. The more people they put in jail, the more money they make.
No. Oh, you said prisons. I thought you said presents. I apologize.
I'm sorry.
No, we don't. We are state run. However, we have issues, and we're very cognizant of our issues. Nationally, people probably know that we did have a riot not long ago. But our state has been very proactive to figure out how we can fix our prison system. There's differing views on how we should do it, but the positive portion is that the conversation is happening, and it's a continuing conversation. We're constantly figuring out ways to fix it. It's not something that we just dealt with in the moment of the riot and a couple months after. It's an ongoing process. I'm confident that our prison system here in Delaware is going to make a change. We are small, we are active state, and we are passionate about making change and making ourselves a more just state. So, however, we do have our issues, but we are working diligently to address them.
Awesome. And I think the fact that you have so much experience within the community, and you are, reading your profile on your page, it's very clear you are the 99%. You know what it's like. You, at one point you were making chicken at a gas station or something. And, so you know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck. Can you kind of touch on that and how that's shaped who you are?
Yes. So there, I've had ups and downs throughout my whole life, right? So when I grew up, my parents were raising 6 kids. I'm the youngest of 6. They struggled. And my parents, literally for Christmas, we got hand-me-down toys, homemade toys, often small things that to this day make it so that I am a very simple person. You'll find that I always wear the same clothes until they're worn out, because I realized that I gained more through experiences. However, by the time I reached high school, my parents were doing pretty well. I was the last kid in the house. So I saw what success could look like and feel like. When I joined directly out of high school, I worked with a Boys and Girls Club, working with team programming. And from there, I learned personally what it was to not have. I couldn't afford my education. And so I could say I went into the military to be very patriotic, but to be honest, I needed to pay for college. And when 9/11 happened, I thought that we were truly under attack. And so I didn't pull out of my commitment when I could have, because I technically signed up in May. 9/11 happened in September, and I left in November. So, but while I was in, at first I struggled, but then I was enlisted air crew, so I made pretty decent money. No complaints. I bought a house, had nice cars. I didn't worry about paying my bills. Then I got sick from the anthrax vaccine, was medically retired, and the bottom fell out. And the truth is, if I didn't have a strong family, I would have been one of the countless homeless veterans in the street. And I think about that all the time when I see it. It was really hard. I was fighting for my disability, to get my body working properly so I can move forward with life. And it was a struggle, and it was scary. I got things together, and I ended up being trying to work random jobs, and to include frying chicken at a gas station, cutting lawns, cleaning out people's basements and garages, whatever I could to make the money to pay the bills. And then I landed a job as an auto body mechanic. And so I often joke that, if you wreck your car, I can fix it. So that's always a good thing. But my parents were teachers. I never had to worry about healthcare, right? And so because I was medically retired, I personally, that's one thing I didn't have to worry about was healthcare. I still pay $53 a month for my entire family to have healthcare. I don't have to worry about prescriptions. I get them filled on base for free. And I was working in blue collar, and people were struggling at the entry level and having to pay these large sums of money for their premiums, and still had large deductibles, barely making ends meet. The corporation would have luncheons every month to say what record profits we made, and people were just trying to piece their lives together with healthcare and pay, and it blew my mind. And what blew my mind also was how removed people were from the political system. Again, beyond being there for my neighbors, which was something I was taught, I was also taught that democracy is something you are active in. My father's side is Black. People literally died for it. My mother's side is white. She literally was attacked by people while registering Black sharecroppers in the South, right? This is something we don't take for granted. And people were. And part of it I understood because they were just trying to make ends meet. But then the other part was they lost hope in the government, or they felt that, well, my vote doesn't make a difference. And then when they did vote, you saw them voting against their best interests. And I had the opportunity to sit and really explain to people what was going on, because all too often, even the best intentioned politicians don't break down information to people so that it's understandable. Our laws are written in a way that is very much out of reach for the average American. And once you explain, then they get activated and they're incensed, right? But I had the ability to do that. And so when I stopped working at the auto body shop, I actually went from there to being a full-time organizer. And it was on faith, but I knew that's where I was supposed to be. And sometimes I got paid for things, and sometimes I didn't. I didn't know how I was going to get gas to get to certain places, but I knew it had to happen, and it was where I was supposed to be. And people would tell them their stories, and it was just you couldn't just sit and wait anymore, and it's. So yeah, I am part of that 99%, and the 99% need to know that we have a voice. We have the answers. People tell me the answers every day, but don't feel that they have the abilities, and they do, because we have millionaires running our government, and we are in record deficits. Go to any of these neighborhoods, even the middle-class neighborhoods, people are still living paycheck to paycheck. They know how to make a dollar stretch. They know what the important items are to spend money on and what can wait for a moment. So people need to stop questioning themselves. Don't cower in the corner and wait for something better to come. Know that you can stand up and make a difference. And so, yeah, I am the 99%, and I'm proud of it. And the thing is we're going to flip it, and the 99% are going to rise up and make a change in this country. We just need to know that we have the ability to. So,
absolutely.
Sorry, I want to.
I'm just like, yes, yeah. I feel inspired. Yes, like you're the epitome of who we need. We need activists. We need people who have been through struggles, who know what it's like, because sometimes it seems like you guys are the only ones who have empathy. It's like, how are you going to tell people, how they feel when you live in a mansion? Like, right. I'm sorry. No, we want people. We want us to represent us. Yeah. I also saw, which was really cool and which is extremely rare, you are endorsed by a sitting state rep, which is really, really rare.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us kind of how that happened? And his name is Sean Lynn.
Yes. He is actually my representative from the state, and he is known to be very progressive. And there have been times where we've worked together on immigration issues, different issues throughout the state, and not for either one of us to advance, but to advance the people. And when it came up that I was running, he immediately reached out and congratulated me. There was no political backroom banter about an endorsement. He just did it. He believed in me. He believed in the time for change. I know that is a really played out phrase, but it was mind blowing because it wasn't something that we expected, to be honest, at all, because no person who has primaried Senator Carper has gotten an endorsement from a sitting legislator in our state. And so it was huge. And he's a good man. And I was honored to receive his endorsement, and hopefully more come. But I also know that we are a very entrenched state, especially because of our size. So it does take, it can impact a person's career. And so I realized that it is a big step to do so.
Absolutely. There's a viewer named Christopher, and he wants to know if you've thought about seeking the support of Justice Dems or Our Revolution.
Yes. So I actually, excuse me, I'm finishing up a cold, so I'm sorry. So yes, actually I have my endorsement surveys in. I'm sure there are a lot of people who have endorsement surveys in with them. So I'm confident they'll get to mine, but we are a late primary, September 6th, so they might push it back a little bit. But yes, we are seeking those endorsements.
Awesome. Johnny, who's also running for office, he wants to know, so the guy who endorsed you, he is a good one. He's a progressive.
Yes.
Okay. So is he up for re-election as well?
He actually is. Okay. Yeah. And so in the past, he hasn't really had competition, but he does now. So even more so speaking to the testament that he wasn't afraid to step up and support change, because it can obviously work negatively against him in doing so.
Maybe you guys could do joint appearances or something. That'd be cool.
Yes.
I know some people in Las Vegas do that.
Canvassing, actually.
Oh, awesome. That's awesome. So as far as who you're running against, I know it's the incumbent and you, who the incumbent is supposedly a Democrat. I was looking at his history, more centered, to be generous. So who else is in the race between you two as far as Dems?
Just the two of us.
Okay, that's what I thought. And then how many Republicans?
There were two. One had to step down due to health reasons. And so now there's just one, Trurono. And he is the only one representing for Republicans right now.
And any third parties?
As of now, no. Okay,
so at this point, it could be a Republican and one of you two. So that's a good chances.
Yes,
I've interviewed people who are like, I'm running against 12, and that would make me nervous.
We have a small field.
We touched on healthcare. It looks like when I saw on your page an article that states that Delaware a few days ago had a hearing on the minimum wage. You guys are at $8.25. I'm in Pennsylvania. We're at $7.25, which is, both of them are absurd.
Yes.
But when I was reading it, it looks like it was only going to increase 50 cents a year.
Only 50 cents, and it still did not pass.
My word.
Yeah.
And then it said only till 2020.
Right.
So you're talking $1.50.
Yeah.
And it still didn't pass.
Exactly. And again, it speaks to the disconnection of policymakers and their constituents. Even with us now, we say it's only that much, but for some people, that's a huge amount of money. And I know we're not necessarily talking about the minimum wage, but there's a story of a lady whose Social Security went up by $3, and then her food stamps went down by $5 because she had that $3 increase. And so she lost $2 a month. And for her, it destroyed her. So again, people who are working full time, that money makes a huge difference. I've been to the point where I literally had to count every penny for paying for food. And there's always some type of excuse as to why we can't do something. And in the end, we don't consider the people that are being impacted. There were some people who were talking about it impacting our casino and making it so that the casino wouldn't be able to pay, wouldn't make enough profits. But again, 50 cents an hour, right? It's to me, it's inexcusable.
I'm sure they're making more than enough money at a casino.
Yeah.
Seriously, they're staying open.
Yeah. In fairness, they're not making as much profits, but they're making profits.
But the more money people make, the more they're going to spend and gamble or what have you. Now, also, you have on your platform poverty, of course, and jobs. Yes. Do you support a federal job guarantee?
I do. So let me say this first. I was hesitant. And the reason I was hesitant is because, like many Americans, especially those who are struggling, I was fearful of what type of government would be running this, right? I was fearful that we would create a modern indentured servitude, right? And so for me, I had to really look into it and decide, is this something that I could support? And so I had droves of information just thrown at me. And I came to the determination that does make sense to have a program. We have a number of areas that are not being filled on the government level. There are tons of infrastructure jobs that need to be created. We have and filled. We need more social workers. We need people to process different types of applications. There's so much work at varying degrees of skill levels that people can have a job. The key is to ensure that in the policy, we have it written that it cannot be privatized. The moment we privatize, we then risk indentured servitude. And we have to also make sure that there's room for growth in these jobs, that you aren't set at a desk and you aren't going to be a perpetual, person fetching coffee. You need to make sure you can move up. And if you choose not to, that's fine, but you can't be stuck. You have to have the ability to provide more for yourself and your family. And, but given those conditions, absolutely. It will steer more money into our economy. It will get people off of social services. It will instill hope, right? Nothing feels better than taking care of yourself. I have not seen, contrary to what a lot of propaganda tries to tell us, I have never seen a person with just joy paying with food stamps. Usually it's, they hide it. Or WIC or with whatever it is. Nobody is just overjoyed to say, oh, I'm on Section 8, right? But people are proud to say, oh, I'm broke, I just paid all my bills, right? Or to say, yeah, I took my child to Chuck E. Cheese, and their child feel like it was the best adventure ever, because usually mom or dad have to say, we don't have the money to do that. So, yes, I think it would be an amazing thing for our economy.
I agree. That's awesome. Christopher, he says he's going to vote for you. So that's awesome. Um, he's in your area. He said that particularly huge jobs with unemployment, especially for those with felonies and those who are prescribed medical marijuana, can also lose their jobs. Do you support marijuana legalization?
I absolutely do. So on a number of scales, first we have to obviously do it with medically, but decriminalization of marijuana is getting to the point where there's no question that it should be done, right? It's happening in enough states. People are okay, right? So we can't say that we don't know what will happen. Also, we haven't seen a huge influx of crime or lack of productivity, all of these things that people said would happen. We haven't seen a huge increase in other drug use. In fact, the drug use that has increased, because I am active in the opioid crisis work is directly traced back to prescription drugs. So, to me, there is no excuse for us not to legalize it. And prohibition has proven itself to just increase incidences of crime and usage, just like it did with alcohol. So.
Right. And we see it constantly puts people of color in jail. Yes. It constantly. Yes. Which is probably why private prisons don't want to legalize it, because then they lose a lot of money, unfortunately. Yes. So you also talk about criminal justice reform. So what specifics do you want to touch on about that?
So a couple of areas. We need to make sure that and on my website, I say we have to reach the root of the problem. So dealing with poverty, lack of jobs is directly related to crime increase. We have a major issue with that in Delaware. We do not have enough industry. Education, something that oftentimes people overlook is segregation. When there is segregation, there are certain pockets that specifically industry does not go to. And so it creates a situation where poverty maintains itself. Opportunity is elusive. And then also it feeds into the propaganda that has been used for centuries in America to separate people based on color. And so if you don't know a Black person or a Spanish person or a white person, then they're going to be the enemy to you, right? But if you've gone to school with them, if you've worked with them, it changes the narrative and your understanding. And so when we do that, we no longer turn a blind eye when there's things such as an unjust police shooting. We no longer turn a blind eye, much like the students of Parkland saying, we were victims of gun violence, but there's been gun violence before. Nobody heard it because it was communities of color affected. Making sure that we force, it sounds bad to say, but we have to force ourselves to integrate, right? To understand, to have those uncomfortable conversations, to sit at dinner and have foods that are a little different than we're used to. And it sounds funny, but it really creates bonds and builds communities. And and also education is key because we're putting people in prison because they don't have a plan for anything else, right? The society is set up to hold certain groups down. And if there is no structure in place to ensure that there is that opportunity to succeed, then there's going to be that perpetual cycle. And then we have to work on institutional racism. DA in Philly, the new one, Krasner, is amazing, right? I'm sure you know, and then he just did it. People are like, we're not going to be able to do it. And he did it. And he said, if you're not on board, you're out of here. And he just said, we will not We will not prosecute people who have marijuana. We're just not going to. We're not going to put paraphernalia charges on them. We are not going to put people in prison. We're not. What was when we offer pleas? We will not first go with the highest. We will go with the lowest time in prison, and then you have to justify anything greater. Why is worthwhile to the tax? Simple, right? For years, all of us were thinking, how are we going to do this? And he just did it. This needs to be done nationally. He's shown us the way. Philadelphia is not falling apart, right? Again, we often are saying that these ideas that are labeled as progressive, but they're just humane, are going to cause problems. But we're seeing over and over and over again, it is not just morally responsible, it's fiscally responsible, and it's cleaning our communities in a holistic way. So I would very much mimic what he's doing because it's amazing, right?
Yeah. I'm finally proud to be in Pennsylvania. I see so much stuff and I'm like, oh my God, why Pennsylvania? Come on, people.
Yes.
Seriously. Bringing your guns to church to have them blessed and stuff. Like, Pennsylvania, come on. Seriously? Something else that you touch on your page is environment. I know that you're against fracking, which is huge. What other things would you want to address should you get into office?
Yes. So fracking and offshore drilling definitely are an issue. We are the lowest lying state in the nation. So much of our state is coastline. So rising tides is an issue. Whether we want to call it global warming or not, I don't care about semantics, but our shoreline is getting erased. We need to make sure that we are protecting our environment and on a number of levels. So we don't need to add more pollution to our oceans. We don't need to add more pollution to our water in general. Delaware is having a horrible issue with water safety throughout the state. The good thing, it's bringing together communities regardless of socioeconomic background, because something what I always say is money can't protect you from pollution. Air and water, it's going to get you, right? And so people are coming together and fighting it, but it's a problem because for so long we've turned our back on infrastructure. So there are pipes that are breaking and leaking and putting contamination into our water. We have a huge, especially in Kent and Sussex County, our lower two counties, hunting and fishing, all of those things, outdoors type of activities are family activities, and people are noticing. They're not shooting a goose. They're just dead on the ground. When they're fishing, their fish have spots that they should not have because they are tumors. We are told you can eat 3 ounces of fish from the waters of Delaware a year. When you tell me that, I don't want to eat it at all, right? These are issues, true health issues. Bacteria in our water, we can't allow this. When I grew up, I lived at the beach. My grandparents lived in California. We would go out and visit, and that's what I planned for my daughter. And then I'm afraid sometimes to let her in the water because of the trash that's floating through, or just knowing that after a major storm, the bacteria that is put up. So we have to protect our environment. Unfortunately, again, because people are just trying to survive, many people don't take heed to the urgency of this problem. So those of us who are a little past that and are surviving know we can't wait any longer. So this is a key issue. Beyond the other areas, environmental justice is something that we have to stand up hard and strong for because we're not going to get another Earth, right? And study after study shows that it's not like every 10 years that we wait. No, every moment we wait, we truly are creating an environment that is going to be hard to come back from and save. And so in order for anything to go forward, I think it is important when we bring in industry, we have to consider how green can we make it. We have to look at how we can clean up the areas that we've already destroyed. but hopefully not past the point of repair. We have to halt jobs such as Keystone Pipeline for a number of reasons. One, we treaded on a treaty that we've treaded on many a times with Native peoples, and that's inexcusable, especially in this time. We know better, we should do better. And then also, we've proven that we contract with companies who cut corners, and we knew there would be leaks. We fought and said there are going to be leaks. There were leaks, and there's still discussion of should we go on. Absolutely not. We should not go further. There are just basic areas that we shouldn't mess with. Fracking. The truth is, at the depth that is happening, we don't know at what point the chemicals will come up. The problem is, to get to that depth, you have to drill wells, and they're not building them correctly, and so chemicals are leaking out into our water systems. And we're telling all of these people because they're normally in rural areas, and so they're already suffering because they're usually small farmers who are working for large corporate farms, and they're just trying to make it because they were lied to by the chicken industry or whatever. And so they're like, okay, I can make a little bit more money. And now their cows are having tails fall off. Their children are being born with tumors. Their grandpas are just, like all of these things just don't make sense. And they're saying, but it's safe and it's going to make us independent when it comes to energy. But it's killing us. And then we're having earthquakes in places we're not supposed to be having earthquakes. And we're still saying it's safe. We need to be honest with the people. We need to explain how things are happening. And especially when we have an administration who is cutting back on regulations, it's going to get worse. And we have to stand our ground now.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm hoping there's this progressive wave. We're starting out pretty good yes. At the beginning of the primaries. We got to keep it up. We just have to. I've seen some other comments in here. Are you familiar with MMT?
No.
It's called Modern Monetary Theory.
No.
Federal taxes don't fund spending. So essentially, we print our own money. So when the government states, we can't afford this, we'll have to cut this to do this or what have you, that's not accurate. We have the money to do all of this right now. There's nothing holding us back. There's no reason we can't. So basically, this is what other countries implement. That's why they all, have these things that we don't. Yeah. Because they're actually using what is actually available that we're not being told is available. Right. So I can send you a couple short videos or whatever. It's easier to explain, but it puts things into perspective once you learn about it, because you realize that we don't have to do without. Yeah. That we're, we need to bring back humanity to politics. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's something that's been lacking quite a bit. Right. But the one interesting thing about Trump is he inadvertently got so many people off their asses.
Yes.
So many people up. So right. That's the interesting thing is. Yes. So as far as, when he became president and everything, what has it been like for you? What, have you felt more inspired? Have you felt defeated? What's it like?
I wouldn't say inspired. I would say driven. Because I don't know what your reaction is when some of these things happen. Appointments of people, executive orders passed, some bills pushed through Congress, but I feel it, right? I feel it, and truly. And I realize the impact, and it fires me up, and I realize we have to keep pushing. We have to keep going forward. There are moments when it's like, dang, we lost that one. But then I just know we have to keep moving forward. There's anger, a lot of anger, right? And sadness. And we can put it all different types of ways. But and oftentimes the anger and sadness go hand in hand, right? So as a person who is biracial, I see the divides in my own family. That for a long time, I thought that were overcome, at least with us, right? Even though I knew there were still problems in our nation. And then you realize that there is still that sensitivity. I see a fear, I know even for myself, so that there are places that I don't necessarily feel comfortable anymore where I did before. And I consider my children who because of their complexion, if we continue down this road, are going to have a completely different experience even than I, because of myself being fair, right? And I say that because the best story I can give is I was at a organizers retreat, and during the retreat we were discussing how we deal with language that offends us or actions that offend us, right? And generally people of color in the room, white people in general, would say, oh, I would say this or I would say that, and and this is how I would handle it. And the people of color, and the darker their complexion got, the more likely they were to say, I just let it roll off my shoulder, it happens all the time, right? But then there was this spoken word performance, and it dealt with police brutality. And by the end of that, male or female, the darker a person's complexion, there wasn't a dry eye. Some people were teary-eyed and some were truly boo-hooing, including myself. And the part that got me was she was talking about the little girl who got shot on her grandmother's couch that was 6 years old. The time my daughter was 6. And I can't remember the exact words, but one of the lines stands out to me, and it said, her only crime was being dark-skinned. My daughter is dark-skinned. And by virtue of living in our country right now, that makes her a criminal. I can't stand by and let that happen, right? And I can't allow us to not have these conversations. I am biracial. I was raised by a mother who understood that in the society I'm seen as a minority. Black, many people take me as Spanish, regardless, I am a minority, but I was also taught to speak up more for myself. And I had to learn, I had to be careful teaching my daughter that, because dark-skinned little girls in America are put in different types of classes because they are considered defiant when they stand up for what is their right, right? Granted, I would go in there and say, you're not going to do this to my daughter. However, I would have to have that fight. And so I have to teach her how to navigate and be political when she shouldn't have to worry about that. And so how has this affected me? It has changed how I view society, and the fact that there is a sense of urgency to make people realize that there is more connecting us than that divides us, but to not be afraid of those conversations, the things that make people uncomfortable, that we shy away from at dinner parties and coffee greetings and all of those things. Regardless of race, we have to say it. We have to say the things that make it rips us to our core, right? I had an interview and I was talking about my family history, and I had mistaken which member of my family was in the KKK. And my great aunt was hurt by it, right? And I'm working on issuing a statement where everybody should know. My grandfather was it was my great-grandfather, it was my great-great-grandfather, not my great-grandfather, who was KKK. And that was very important for my aunt to have fixed, and I do apologize for that. But I also understand that even in my family, for me, as a person of color within my family, one generation didn't make a difference, right? For a person that was white in my family, one generation made all the difference. And if we can't have that conversation within a family that is considered very diverse in America, we're not going to be able to fix our problems in America. And it's painful. I can tell you, I feel the pain now because this just literally was a conversation I had 2 days ago. My grandmother is 93. She served her country. She's an amazing person. To know that it hurt her for the family history to be portrayed that way hurts me. And yet I was also hurt by the fact that it was not necessarily understood how that family history also affects me as a person of color in this family. So, so there's a lot we have to work on. But again, Trump brought things forward. It made me understand that I cannot be silent, even when it's uncomfortable, regardless of whether it deals with finances or healthcare or race or gun violence. We have to be outspoken. We have to be open to education because I don't have all the answers. I would never profess to. But as a group we do, but we're never going to get to the bottom of it if we don't have those open conversations and are willing to listen to sides that at first seem off to us. And then as we listen deeper, we could probably find somewhere where we can meet in the middle. And that's key.
I feel like I'm inspired listening to you. I'm like, can I just put you in my pocket? And when I'm sad, I'll just be like, yo, Kerri, pull me out. You're so right on. You're awesome. And what was your thought when you heard about that poor young man the other day who was killed, and he's a dad of 2, and 20 times he shot. I mean, it's just so disgusting. But the thing that I was like, are people going to march the street about this now? Because we've been talking about school shootings, but can we get back to this too? Because this is really important. And you saw San Fran, and so I give huge props to them. And I think that's also another thing we need to stay focused, that it is not just in schools. Like this is, and the unfortunate thing is a lot of the policemen who do kill people of color, they've been getting off, which is just the worst thing. As a person of color, how do you feel when something, because I know it disgusts me. So how does that make you feel?
It's something that your family prepares you for, right? I don't think that there is a minority in America who hasn't been prepared for the possibility of these type of confrontations. I've dealt with those types of confrontations myself. So I went to high school in Southern California, and my family found a foreclosure, which allowed us to live in an amazing neighborhood that we never would have lived in otherwise. I went to an outstanding high school, and it opened my eyes up to the haves, right? Now, I was probably 20 years old when this happened, and I was driving from Orange County, where I lived, into LA to go to a nightclub. It was late at night, and the freeway was mostly closed, and lights came on. And it was myself and a friend of mine. And at the time, it was when there was a lot of people impersonating police officers. And so there was the recommendation that you slow down, put your hazard lights on, let them know you know they're there, and go to a place that is well lit. Well, I did that. It happened to be that we were driving through not the best part of town at that point. We pulled over, and they made us get out of the car. They were a little rough, speaking to us really in what I would consider unprofessionally. There were nerves. They checked my friend's ID first, and she was not from a well-to-do area. And still going on and on. And then they checked mine. And immediately, the whole scenario changed, right? One cop said to the other one, I kind of gave the eye of like, hey. And then they said, hey, where are you going? Right? And I explained, And they said, well, why are you driving through here? I said, well, that's the only way I know how to get to where we're going. And I was literally at that point offered a police escort through the bad part of town because they thought my family had money, not knowing that we just got a foreclosure, right? And so can money help minorities? Somewhat. But again, what if it was somebody that just didn't care at that moment, right? What if they hadn't checked my ID? And how would it have turned if myself and my friend both were from the same neighborhood? Would we have been one of the victims that was falsely arrested because they found something in our car? Would we have been some type of abuse? Would some type of abuse have happened to us? I don't know. But what I do know is that from a young age, I was told how to respond to police officers, how to follow all the directions. Is it hard? Yes. When you're spoken to in a certain way and you feel like you should have the right to say, I deserve that respect, especially when I was going to a high school where these students just knew they were entitled to certain things, right? But my reality didn't say that. So when I see that this young man was shot, I see a number of problems. One is the demonization of Black skin and brown skin and Asian colored skin and looks and names that sound Middle Eastern because you're immediately ISIS. All of these things are demonized, right? And that's not okay. And the moment those things happen, it's okay for somebody to harm you. And it's okay to look into your history to see if it was justified because maybe you made a misstep in your youth, right? But then it tells me there's a problem with the way we train our police officers. No target should be the color of any human being. Make our targets green or purple or something that is not a human flesh color. If you are going to be working in an area that is vastly different from your demographic, spend time in that community before you are placed there as a police officer. Understand that these people that you are working for, because that's what police officers are, they're servants to their communities, that you're working for, most of them are harmless. And you don't have to be afraid. Is there going to be crime in areas? Absolutely. But if you can talk them down, it will be okay. As a military member, we had rules of engagement, right? Don't shoot until you are shot at. You weren't allowed to say, well, I thought they were going to shoot. You had to be shot at. I am not saying that police officers don't have a difficult job. They do. When something scary happens, I'm going to call a police officer. I'm not going to go check the problem. However, just like when I joined the military, I knew there was a chance of losing my life. I had to follow those rules of engagement. And if somebody fires at a police officer, then there should be consequences to that. But if nobody fires at you, you have no excuse to say you fear for your life. None. Your job is to conquer fear all the time. And your job is to be rewarded with pay and people saying thank you and being treated kindly because you are a peace officer. That's what your job is. And we have to change how we train people. We have to understand also that these police officers, regardless of color, have been raised in an American society that pushes propaganda, that demonizes people. And so now you're put into a situation where you're almost forced to be afraid because it's been told to you your entire life. So our police academies need to deprogram people, to create an environment where people can function and not judge simply because of the color of somebody's skin. I'm not going, again, to profess that I know how to create that curriculum, but somebody does. There's somebody out there, I don't know who you are, but you're out there and know how to create that curriculum, and we need to do it. And it's not something we can wait on. This is urgent. People are dying. Officers are afraid because they're afraid that any move they make, even if it is justified, is going to be judged as racially motivated or anything else like that. People of color are freaking out because there truly are cops, and there have been cops for years, decades that have been doing this, but now it's on camera, and so there's proof. There has to be a change, and we need to work together to make it happen. And now is going to be the time. It's just like during the civil rights movement when they started to televise the atrocities that were happening in the Deep South. People start to say this wasn't okay, and so hopefully enough people will stand up and say this is not okay. And it doesn't have to be just a person of color saying that could be my son. That there will be white people who say that can be my son or my nephew or my cousin, right? This is my family. And then things will change.
Right on. Absolutely. Is there, if you want to leave something with the viewers, what's something you want to leave them with? So they look into you more or consider voting for you or hopefully donate. What's the all-encompassing message you want to leave them with?
The big message I want to leave is that we have the power to make change. And it's going to be truly an action of we. So long as we sit back and think that we don't have power, then those who currently held it will continue to keep us down. Step up or get stepped on, right? So if you don't believe in what I'm saying, find a candidate that you do and support them. Give them your time. If you have the funds, give them funds, because unfortunately money still drives our election processes. If you feel that you are a viable candidate, that you have the ability to do it, then step up and do it and find a team that will push you. We need to create change. It's not enough to sit back and hope it will happen. It is an action. And together we can do that. As far as myself, if you do support me, we need volunteers. Money definitely is great, but we'll never outraise the incumbent. But we will outwork them, right? We will knock on doors. We will let people know that they are heard, that they are welcome, and that this isn't a party type of thing. This is an issue campaign, and we will change. We will work actively to change how we are representing people here in Delaware. KerriEvelynHarris.com. You can volunteer there, get information. Reach out to my scheduler at KerriEvelynHarris.com if you would like me to come and speak to your group. I would love to do that. And again, volunteers and donations, 50 cents, $1, thousands of dollars, you take it all. Truly, I've been at the point where literally I can only donate $1 to a campaign in the past. So I know what it is, and that speaks volumes because I know what it is to work a budget. So for all of you who have done that, because we've gotten a lot of those types of donations, thank you. That's it. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. You're amazing. And since you guys don't have your primary till September, I'm definitely going to be asking you back on.
I would love to. Thank you. Thank you.
That's a while away.
It is. So plenty of time for people to come out and help knock on doors and spread the news of how we are going to create change here.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you guys for watching as well. Tomorrow I'm going to be doing a fourth show this week. I'm going to be in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania at the March for Our Lives event, and I'll be streaming and interviewing and all that fun stuff on the Harrisburg Capitol steps. So hopefully you'll join me. That starts at noon. And thank you guys for watching once more. And thank you so much, Kerri. You are amazing. I wish you the best of luck.
I really do appreciate it. Have a wonderful evening.
You too.